Bob, welcome. This is our Creating Space interview with Robert Fritz. Bob and I have been friends for a long time, so I'm looking forward to our conversation about your creativity and your creative process. For those of you new to Creating Space, we have a series of interviews with artists, and the point is not to think about how wonderful they are, but to be inspired about our own creative process and to listen for those clues that tell us, all of us who are aspiring artists or at least aspiring creative folks, what we can learn from Bob as he talks about how he has gone through his artistic journey. So Bob, thank you for joining us this morning.
Great intro, by the way. I like everything that you said.
Good. We're in the right spot.
Yes.
So by way of introduction, you're a free-blown glass artist. And I know that your glass tells stories, yours and others. So let's start with your story. How did you find glass and how did it find you?
All right, let's do this. Let me go ahead and share my screen if I could. And that way I can talk while you're seeing things that might be pertinent too. Let's go to the beginning. Oops, I thought I had that all the way up. I didn't. All right, so that would be a picture, of course, me in my studio. So the beginning that I like to bring up is that I'm just a regular Midwestern guy that bottom line ends up being the same as everyone else that grew up in the Midwest. There are certain cultural aspects that I think fit the Midwestern voice, as Niebuhr put it, as his wife was talking about his work, saying that he came from this certain kind of background. So I like to say, you know, here I began. And so let's go to the next one that way. Okay. So my parents were classically trained musicians, and in our family, you grew up having to play piano. So you started somewhere around kindergarten, first grade, and then you got to choose another instrument. So that actually is me with my back to the camera, playing the piano. My brothers played a variety of instruments. And the great thing for me is that having this background in music allowed me to get to the point where I was able to learn how to learn, in essence, because with music, you're given something that's too hard to do. You think, okay, I'll never learn this. And within a week or two, you know it. So you gain a kind of confidence that I think people don't get if you don't have training in something. And it can be a variety of things, but I felt that music was great in that, you know, it's proven that mathematically you're better off. You're going to be able to do math well. But it's the learning aspect that to me is the important part. So anyway, growing up in that atmosphere, anytime I would approach something, I would approach it figuring, oh, I guess I'll be able to do it eventually. So,
and I think music can put you into your right brain too. So there's that integrated learning as well.
Oh, it is, left and right, both. There's that mathematical side, but there's also that wonderful, when I'm playing something on the piano now and it's an emotional piece, or I'm in a mood that puts me even further in that mood, I can just well up.
Yeah.
There's no question. So it's that music background. So I ended up going to ISU. I had a talent grant on the cello, but I knew I did not want to do music. And it was my second year at ISU that I was able to take a glass class. They had just started at ISU. And I just, within a month, fell in love with the medium, because even though I had always enjoyed working with clay, this was a more immediate process in that once you were finished with the piece, it responded the same way as clay does. but once you were finished, you got to see it the next day. And being a somewhat impatient person, I want to see it. I want to see it. It was great being able to have that and then work the next day on variations of whatever you were doing so that you could change those aspects that need changing. So anyway, that was the whole glass thing, the glass start. And then if I can share again, I'll just quickly go back over to this here. So it was at ISU, it was Joel Myers, who was the instructor. The class was in a two-car garage building on the golf course, just a quick setup. I was fortunate to study with Arthur Tawada, to work collaboratively with Arthur Tawada, who was a Japanese-American ceramicist, painter, printmaker, etc., down in the St. Louis area. We set up a glass studio in a break that I had in my school year and worked probably only 2 months, but it affected me the rest of my life. He was a very, very inquisitive person. He certainly had a great sense of art. And we ended up setting it up first there. And then my own first studio, when I graduated from ISU, was made using telephone pole crossbars. You can still see the holes where the little insulators were. Surrounded by lilacs. I always loved spring because I'd be working and smelling outside. But I've just always enjoyed working with my hands, is the bottom line. So when you say, how did it find you? Even as a kid, when my brother and I would go to my grandfather's house, I remember one very specific time where we went to his sweet potato house where he stored sweet potatoes. And we used knives and started carving these little sweet potato people, men and women, houses, things that would go with the sweet potato people. They'd have hats made out of other sweet potatoes. It was just something that I love form. And so working with glass allows me to work with form. And I really want to mention that for me, it was extremely helpful. And I'll go beyond saying helpful. It was necessary to have a partner who assisted in making this possible, who was very encouraging, who realized the amount of time that I spent was a good thing for both me and our relationship. So that's Doreen on the left, holding Gigi the duck, our neighbor duck. It's a first studio.
Such a great picture.
It is, I love it.
I want to stop you for a minute and go back to Arthur, because I know that picks up a theme that's been important in your life. And that is, well, this, first of all, kind of synchronicity that he was from Alton as well, or anyway, so you were able to connect with him on a summer break, and he kind of opened your world in so many ways. First of all, to be able to have your own studio, he was the one who said, why not do it, right? Let's just do it.
Oh,
and then as a mentor. So we've talked before about how important that tribe is. And lots of times they are other artists, but they're also people. And of course, Doreen is a pretty key member of your tribe, but people who support you in ways that can be surprising and that are so synchronistic and sort of open your mind to other possibilities. So I just wanted to pick that theme up at this point. So I know we come back to it.
Yes. And by sharing with those tribe members, and actually the way Arthur and I set up the studio was through a party that I went to, and it was a high school friend that was at the party, and he said, what are you looking forward to? And I indicated that I was really looking forward to getting back to glass, and he said, well, we should just set up a studio, a little furnace. And within, I think it was a week and a half, 2 weeks of that time, that party, that we had a running studio that we could melt and blow glass. And when you're given a studio at a school, that's certainly gives you the ability to learn the process, but to be having the chance to make a studio on next to nothing. I called it a groundhog glass furnace. It was just built on the side of a hill in this old kiln shed. I mean, that is a wonderful experience. But again, a member of my tribe, a friend from my old high school, just talking with them about it, And wow, from there it goes on. Okay,
Yes.
so let's see here.
Okay. So
that's
back to your first studio.
Oh, well, that's the start. Okay, so the first studio in the winter, it had no walls at the beginning. And so I'd go out there and I'd blow glass in the midst of this cold. And it was such a neat contrast. You know, here you have 2,000-degree glass coming out of the furnace, and yet you're in frigid temperatures. Eventually, if you look at the bottom left, when I started teaching classes in 1984 COD, I would teach classes out of my studio. One of the students brought theater flats, 4x8 theater flats. We laid them on their sides, covered everything else with plastic so that people could be somewhat warmer. But yes, that's the little house that we were living in at the time in the background. And then eventually, after money started being made, I felt like I could actually spend some money on getting the situation better. Because at the beginning, that studio was built for nothing. Those were all found materials. I reused roofing material, shingles that someone had thrown out from a roof job. So being able to finally work on it and spend a little money was, for me, a good thing in being able to move forward.
A leap forward, right?
You know, moving forward into doing the art fairs, setting up. That's my red VW van on the other side. And at the beginning, in the early days of art fairs, no one had any kind of fancy setup. It was just you pulled your stuff out and set it up, and people would walk by, and there you go. You'd sell some work. So let's see here. I would say maybe this is a good time to move on to other questions. So I will mention at the beginning, there were just a couple of galleries in the Chicago area that were instrumental in bringing the crafts out as artwork. And one of those was Mindscape up in Evanston. And they would do shows of glass. That's Deborah Farber in the bottom picture. She and her husband, Ron, were great at being champions for this new art form as opposed to a craft form. And I believe everyone needs champions. I've been very fortunate, both with gallery representation in the early years, as well as having a writer for the Tribune who, for whatever reason, championed my cause. And every couple of years, she would make sure that there was some mention of me or something I had done. And when you have people like that, at one point, she wrote an article about the governor of Illinois taking pieces to Japan and giving my work to the prime minister and the US ambassador. And I was doing a show in Ann Arbor, and the CEO of Toyota walked by with his son, and I happened to have the article out. That was my little bit of PR. Having to learn the business of art. And when they saw that it had gone to the prime minister, they found a piece that it was one of the higher end pieces that I think had sort of a samurai feel, and purchased it. So having these champions assist you in being able to work forward, continue with the artwork, and that includes both making money as well as establishing some sort of reputation.
Yeah, synchronicity and your tribe. I have a question that that for anyone who's kind of, so I've had the privilege of being able to watch you in your studio, and I understand the process, but I've always wondered about you call it free blown glass. So anybody who was at, I don't know, these little mall places where you would see people actually blowing glass, sometimes you blow glass and most of the time you don't. Is that correct? Or can you help clarify what does blown glass really mean?
Sure. So the people that are using a torch and working with being able to heat up Pyrex rods and tubes and make small animals and whatnot.
Right.
That would be torch work, or it's called flame working. Free blown glass is when you have a furnace that you've melted, let's say 150 pounds of glass held at about 2,000 degrees. you're gathering it out with a blowpipe, and you are working it without the use of blowing it in mold. So like a glass blowing factory they might blow their pieces into molds and then work from there, whereas free blowing is not using a mold for the most part. Although I've created some molds. Let's see, as a matter of fact, if I went back,
I know you're.
the faces, for example, on the right, these white glass faces, I sculpted a clay head and then made a 2-piece plaster mold and then blew the glass into that mold. So if that explains that part of the question.
That helps. I think there's a wide range, and I just wondered if people would understand that.
Okay.
So another question I have is, how has your art evolved? We've seen your beginning studios, but I know your art pieces and your artwork itself has evolved over the years. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Let's scoot along here, because I think, yeah, here we go.
Yeah, that's
so at the beginning, I really enjoyed the blowing process. That was it. I just wanted to blow pieces. I wanted most of them to be functional. That was just my emphasis, because again, I enjoy form being the main thing. And then, you know, we talked about failures, and I'll bring up a quote in a minute here, but we talk about failures. Well, when a glass furnace gets old, you start spitting off bits of the furnace liner into the glass. And so when you have these pieces of white glass or white ceramic material in there, I would be trying to either pick them out during the hot process, or eventually I started carving them out. And so the failure of the furnace led to my doing a lot of carving, to the point where really that's kind of what I'm known for. Yeah. And that allowed me to then explore various themes, primarily with birds. So you, in the top right or top left, you see crow piece. On the right side there, it's an egg shape that has a crow skeleton, kind of a dancing crow skeleton, the head of a raven, and then you can see through the piece to the other side where there's some black images, and so on. But there's something about birds that allows me to, I guess it's explore relationships. If I'm doing the pieces for myself, as opposed to a specific commission, frequently the number of birds relates to who's on my mind. And so there are frequently 2 birds, and that would be relating generally to Doreen and me. That would be similar to the one on the far left, one on the far right. In the middle, you see the 2 birds. In this case, instead of being cranes on the left and right, you see 2 hawks. And then that's on the far side of the vase. And then on the near side, you see 3 others. And so those would be my 3 children. Down below are 2 fish. That would be my brothers. And on the back, there are flowers relating to my sister who loves gardening. So it allowed me to start telling these stories. And you'll notice in all of these pieces, and I'm sure we'll get into this more later, it's a story, but it's also expressing my feeling of lightness, the spiraling of the colors that goes up through the pieces. It shows this lift that I both get making the pieces, but also when I think about spirituality, this is, for me, this is indicative of that spiraling upward.
Yes. Oh, stay there for a minute, because I want to say a few things about those pieces that I like.
Here,
it just doesn't.
On this
here,
one?
this one, yes. Because you've jumped ahead to my next question, which is, how does it express your spirituality? And that spiral, I think that all of these, you feel as though they're part of a much bigger, that the birds themselves are part of a much bigger universe, really, with this spiraling energy going through it. And so that's another overarching theme, I think, that that all of these, that there's a oneness to the whole piece. And I also love the fact that the pieces, as you turn them, you get different views of the birds and different views of the back and the front. I mean, there really isn't a back and a front, but because you can see through it, again, it feels like it's all one piece. So I love that. And I know that that's been an evolution in your work that I think really does express your spirituality.
You know what? Thank you for putting it forward, because for the most part, I tell things visually. And I'm always searching for words. How do you really express those innermost thoughts, your feelings? So thank you for the poet that you are and bringing out what I'm trying to say. Excellent. I should mention, you said that we wanted to talk about, the whole idea of spirituality. So I'll go back one piece. So I originally did crows or ravens, because they're thought of by ornithologists as being the single most intelligent bird. And I guess for me, I see myself as just a common Midwestern person. And I believe everyone has that kernel of creativity, a way of expressing themselves, and everyone approaches it differently. Sometimes people don't see it themselves for whatever reason. Maybe they're too tied up in something that's going on in their lives, but we all have it. So I think of myself as just very ordinary, and like a crow, just ordinary. But everyone has this innate intelligence that could be used. So
yes,
I'm just going to go ahead and work through. So another thing that's happened for me, partially because of years of being involved in the craft, would be that you get these unusual opportunities. And I've always tried to somehow say yes. When an opportunity comes, it was just a conscious decision not to immediately say no for anything. So my unusual yeses are, top left, I had some goblets in a show at this gallery in Evanston, and one of the Johnson's wax heirs saw the goblets, wanted to know if, instead of doing male-female pairs of goblets, if I would do a set of 12 goblets. And I said, sure, I could do that. And then it expanded to 12 water goblets, 12 wine goblets. So this came at a time when I had I had 2 young children and really could use the money. So at the time they were what, $75 each? Wait, was it 150? Anyway, they were very expensive. And this money that came from that helped me continue. It gave me an excuse to keep working. The angels came about. That was a Campbell, again through the gallery. Campbell Methuen was every year gave away an angel to their corporate clients. And I was asked by the gallery, would I consider designing 2 or 3 that they could show to Campbell Methuen, so that they show that they were trying to help them out and get an order. Originally, the order was supposed to be for 600 pieces. And I said, I don't want to do 600 pieces, but I'll give you 2 or 3, because they had just done the goblet order for me. So I gave them 2 or 3 angels, and they came back and said, well, Campbell Methuen decided they want your angel to be representing them for this year's Christmas. The year before it had been Tiffany, and the year before some sculptor in Mexico.
Wow.
But except that they raised the number that they needed. They ended up needing over 700. But I had about a year to do them, and they were a simple shape that I could do a number of and put in the back of my annealing oven, and then work on my other pieces. They were quick to do. As you can see, it's a very simple shape, but I think very elegant.
It is, it's beautiful.
Other things like the Georgetown University lamps right here at the bottom, where my initial reaction was, no, I don't want to work on lamps. I was in a sabbatical for my teaching career at that time. And then I thought about it. They called and said, look, we really want you to think about it. This is where the president takes his guests when they want to go to a small chapel in the DC area. And I thought, well, it sure would be nice. So that's another one, a dinnerware set that was in a show down in Memphis. And then actually a really fun one that was there were some large pieces for 100 years of the American College of Surgeons. They wanted to do 100 limited edition pieces with their logo on it, which you can't see very well here. But those kind of things can be a fascinating way of moving on and trying something new. So that's just getting a variety of pieces.
Right. And I think that we've talked a little about how creativity needs some limitations sometimes, needs a challenge. So you have so you have somebody who the commission can do that for you. You want somebody who has an angel. So what creative way can you do an angel or those beautiful surgeon pieces? So sometimes working, if it's this big, you're uninspired. If you're this big, you're kind of problem solving and being creative in the middle of it.
And at the beginning of any project like this, even though you've made several examples that they've based their, yes, we want to have you do it. At the beginning, there's always a feeling of, how can I actually do this? Can I, can I do this? And so I always tell myself, look, the first 10 are just going to be trying to remember and maybe even make it better. And then all of a sudden you get into this groove, and that's where I have, well, I had the video that I can share later.
Well, I think I want to underline that because I think it's really important for artists. It's important for poets. I mean, to sit down and write a poem is very intimidating, and most of the time you come up with dreck. So you have to be able to experiment and try, and you to say I'm not writing anything good for a while. But if you give up, you'll never write anything good. So it's keeping going and getting loose about it somehow, right?
Absolutely, that is great. And let me show that cartoon. I'm going to go ahead and share screen again.
Oh yeah.
And we'll have to get out of the various things. Wait, let me do this, and let me do this. Okay. Escape from this.
While they're there, they can be looking at these pieces that you've done for weddings or anniversaries.
Right.
A way to commemorate an occasion.
Okay, can I get out of this? You know what? I am going to. Well, I'll go on. Yes. So
Okay.
Mission that people will come and talk to me about this piece that they're giving, in this case for a 50th anniversary. And so I will put together a variety of images, usually images that I enjoy working with, sometimes images that they want included, like this dog that you see, the close-up of their dog. But relationships, so like their children, their this and that. So, oops, let's see here. You know what? I'm going to do this. Okay. Various ones for our children's wedding. Each wedding had pieces that had to be that were done on each table. Just going through with the various techniques. I could just click along like crazy. I'm trying to get, there we go. I finally was able to get out. So I wanted to share this one. This commission was an interesting one. Actually, I'll pull up the letter that went with it. So things happen. In this case, it was the Chamberlain Group, who make the garage door openers, who wanted to do a piece for one of their main inventors. This guy has no college education, was simply self-taught, but has 47 patents, and he's the single individual who came up with the bottom electric eye, the beam thing that ended up saving. They figured that it saved between 12 and 20 lives per year. So they came to me and said, look, we want to spend about $3,000 on a piece for Colin. And I said, well, I'll work on some ideas. I don't know if it'll cost you $3,000. I have this Midwestern sense that you should get the most bang for your buck. And so in this case, I ended up doing two pieces. You can see on this piece, there's the world. It's across here. He's known as quite the world traveler, going to different countries and working with the Chamberlain products. Down at the bottom, you see a child playing with a ball and another one on a little cart. The stars in the sky represent, well, the whole variety of things from the 47 patents. The reason there's an eagle is that there's an eagle on the US patent. But I love working with this kind of a project because, well, they had me come into the company, to the corporate headquarters. They had me talk with several people that knew Colin. I just find this to be a neat challenge. And I guess I say that in the case of any of these challenges, it's like my wife doing crossword puzzles or Sudoku. I love that challenge. It's a game for me to come up with something that truly works for that other person.
Yes, yeah, and it may not be your first try. Let's remember that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, I'll pull up the failure. Remind me to pull up that failure.
Okay, I will. So fostering our own creativity, and that usually almost always involves creating a space for ourselves, whether it's a physical space or time in your life to let that creativity, if we're always nose to the grindstone, sometimes that doesn't work. So how have you done that for yourself?
So I talk about the two types of space that you need. You need the mental space, so you need that time to be able to think through things. And sometimes what's helpful is then the physical space. In my case, I have 3 rooms that are associated with the glass. There's the hot shop, which is already set up, so I don't have to pull out anything to get started. I walk out, and if the furnace is on, I turned it off a couple of weeks ago, but it had been on for 7 months. So I go out, I know I'm gonna get working. And then there's the cold shop where I can do my grinding of the pieces so that I can clean off the bottoms and or bevel portions of a piece. And then there's the display area. And that allows me to meet with clients that come in, and we kind of sit down or work on what sort of piece they're looking for. But by having those physical spaces, it helps me with my mental space. I'm always, I'm always thinking about what I'm seeing and how that might be reflected in what I do in glass or other media. But that's such an important part, that you're giving yourself time. And again, I'm somewhat tied to when my furnace is on, again, being that Midwestern, I want to use things wisely, efficiently. If my furnace is on, held at 2,000 degrees day after day for 7 months in a row, I want to be out there working. And so I'm somewhat tied to that. And it gives me the impetus to go out and work, 10 hours in the morning, creating whatever I'm going to be working on.
But I think you speak to the importance of giving ourselves cues almost, that, okay, this is my space, this is what I do here, and you can get into it rather than, I know when I travel, it's harder to get into that space than when I'm at home and in my sunroom. So there's the setting that helps kind of give our creativity a boost or an inspiration.
Yeah, and I encourage that for everyone. You have that small space. I mean, if you could see my desk right now, it's got
I have seen your desk.
And it's filled with things because I might be working on carving that piece over here, or I might be working on paperwork related to, of course, I surround myself with artwork from various tribal members.
Yes.
Whether it's the Tom and Karen piece, we'll talk about the people, the artistic tribe later, but
yes.
You do what you surround yourself with is rather important.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, while you're here, we've got a couple other places in the conversation to get to, but we did talk about mentors and your artistic tribe and how important that is. So can you say a little bit about that?
Sure. So in my world, the artistic tribe included the artist portion of your tribe, because there's the artist portion and then there's the other tribal. It's the people that you're surrounded by day to day. But by going to the early days of the art fairs, 75, 76, 77, and I'd say through at least the late 80s, was a really close-knit group. There were fewer of us that were out there doing it. So you go to a fair and you'd see Tom and Karen, and it was just wonderful to be able to say hello and kind of check in on you'd see the work that they're doing, but you'd also hear about their lives and be inspired by the fact that they were continuing. So there's the art group, and I found that it was nice having the art group, not just at fairs where you're only going to see them during those summer shows, but also surrounding yourself with people that you are with on let's say a weekly basis. And for me, it was helpful to have people like John Nestor, who is a potter living right over in Elmhurst, who was one of the other originators of the holiday show that I do yearly. And he's someone that I go biking with twice a week, and we're always talking about a wide range of things, but also encouraging the other person and continuing their on this new path that they might be on. I have pictures I could show, but the fact that it's even when I was teaching, so I've taught about a decade at every level. And so that's a decade grade school, a decade middle school, a decade plus high school, a decade plus college. But in just talking about what you're doing to various people, in the beginning, when I first set up that studio in 75, I was kneading glass, and I mentioned this to a group of parents. We were playing volleyball, the teachers and the parents, after school or of an evening. And I mentioned I was looking for glass, and this one engineer at Zenith said, "Oh, we throw out tons of glass when in the TV manufacturing business." And that was my source. I ended up trying out the TV fronts, which were about a half-inch thick. That was my source of glass for 15 years until they switched to a different type screen. So just mentioning,
Isn't that amazing? Right.
What you're doing, you come up with they help you come up with solutions to your problems. So I'm a real believer that you just put it out there, and the universe will assist you in responding to what your needs are.
Right. Yeah. Well, and we've seen that throughout your career, that these people show up with just the right thing to say, or right.
And whether you're partnering with them on pieces, which is a real fun thing to do, or helping them on something, or them helping you. So yes, your tribe, both your specific artistic tribe as well as the people you are with, and whether that's
right.
the congregation of your a church-going group, whether that's a neighborhood that is very supportive in what they do. It's a wide range of things.
Yeah. So you just mentioned your long career in teaching, and so the other part of mentoring is being a mentor. Can you talk about how important that has been in your life, working with students?
Sure. So I'm trying to think where to begin. Yeah. So I started teaching piano in high school. When I was in high school, that was my high school job. I taught as many as 8 students, and that was the way I got money for dates and whatever I wanted to purchase. But I found that when I was mentoring, especially the older students, so this would be as we got to middle school and high school, that by the time I taught high school, I had already been established and was making the kind of money I needed to make to support our family. And so I switched from sending my work out to the national and international shows, which takes a lot of time. Another aspect of how do you get your work known. And I started entering the students' films. The main thing I enjoyed teaching, I love teaching a variety of things, but teaching animation is just a real joy for me. I absolutely love it. And so I started sending the students' animations out to first national shows, well, regional and national shows, and then international shows. and found that the students were getting accolades all over the world. I mean, Australia, Germany, the New York, the Evil City Film Festival once called the Willowbrook students the super team from Willowbrook, whatever. But we would send them out and get them recognized. And then I'd always make sure that the sign out in front of the school recognized the students for having their work accepted into the Ottawa International Animation Festival or the Evil City Film Festival or whatever. But I found that it really affected the kids. And I think of one instance particular, Doug Anderson, who he was okay at drawing, not great in high school, just okay. And he sat next to a guy that was really good at drawing, but this other guy that was really good at drawing would maybe finish 5 or 6 drawings in a 1 hour period, whereas Doug would finish, oh Lord, 20, 30, 40. He just finished lots of cells for his animation. And when his animation was about his summer vacation, and it just truly reflected what a kid thinks about it, what a summer vacation gives to a high school student. Anyway, sent the films off to various competitions. His was in Ottawa International, I would say the most prestigious film festival that's been around forever. And because of that, because his was chosen, he ended up going into animation. He's now working at Cartoon Network. There are other students that are now former students that are now at DreamWorks, or that run the animation studio for Amazon, or just a wide range of things. And it filled me up. It made me feel great to have them do so well, because I knew what it did for me when I would get into a national or international show. I remember that feeling. And for me, it was a way of sharing how your successes are going to assist you in finding your path. You know, how do you know what you want to do? I went to college as an undeclared major. How does a high school student truly know what they want to do? But by giving them a chance to have successes, it's a wonderful thing. So
yes, how gratifying that must be. Yes, to know that, I mean, people had, let's go back to Arthur. I mean, he had such an impact on your life, but you have had such an impact on so many lives. And of course, those are the ones that you can count who've got this more visible success, but you don't even know all the other ways that you've helped kids. Even the one who was drawing the 5 cells. Maybe he needs to go into drawing, not animation, but anyway.
Yes.
You never know what impact you've had on people, right?
Exactly.
So we've got a couple other things we want to get to before we wrap up. You have talked about how important it is to be a working artist and have a recognition of all that entails rather than just creating art. Can you speak a little to that?
Being a working artist as someone that's choosing to make this part of their occupation.
Exactly, the business of art, right?
Okay, so I tell people now that it'd be great to have had a business minor, because I felt like I just had to truly learn how do you make money at something. And one of my friends that was head of the department at Columbus College of Art and Design has a wonderful paper that he wrote about how at that school, and hopefully others, they teach art students, so people that are truly art majors, and whether that's a BFA or an MFA, it doesn't matter. 3 things. They certainly teach you how to create art, which is what most art schools do. But then they also teach you how to make product and some of the business behind when you make a product that you know is going to sell. How do you sell it? So that's huge, because I can make lots of artwork that might be absolutely gorgeous and that I might spend unbelievable numbers of hours on it, but can I sell that to recoup the hours that I spent? And so there's the product that you make that you know is going to sell well because it's in a great price range, or it's a very unusual thing. So that's the second part. And then the third part is learning how to teach, because teaching allows you, again, another opportunity for income, but also insight into new ideas. So I teach workshops that as a matter of fact, I'd like to switch over while I'm talking to this. So let me get back to screen sharing if you don't mind. Okay, let's get back over to here. And I'm going to pull it down to, actually, I'll jump in here real quick. So this is, I got into casting glass because my assistant at the time said that he really wanted to do some sand casting. And I said, look, I'll pay for the materials if you'll get the box made and pick out the materials. So sometimes it's just getting someone's idea about what you can do. Here, by the way, is part of my artistic tribe. This is the annual holiday show. It's always the first weekend after, or the first weekend of December. Here's a product that's given away. So if you come to the studio during my holiday show, you get this free opportunity to pull out a piece of Latticino cane. And then before you leave, I've hired people to come and help me grind the pieces, to wrap wire around the outside edges and so on. And we always have guest artists. So while there's my normal tribe of John Nestor and his wife Susan and Carolyn, who's a neighbor that just does wonderful culinary treats, there are always guest artists for people that to see new work. So with workshops, I get the chance to meet these fascinating people, and whether that's the judge and his wife that shows up, whether that's the head of a coffee company in Chicago or Oberweis Milk, or just a wide range of people, CEOs, but also people high up, and a couple from McDonald's that were in the upper echelon that had just retired and wanted to spend time working on glass. And so you're getting to watch them come up with some ideas or different color combinations that you maybe never thought of, because they get complete control of what colors are going to be on their piece. And it gives me ideas. I've got to tell you that this cartoon on the right was done by a person that was vice president of Leo Burnett, a huge advertising agency in the city. He did a workshop with his siblings and created this particular workshop cartoon that I have on my webpage. You know, a social media presence these days is unbelievably important, and that would be part of learning how to market yourself, that kind of thing. So we can stop sharing now, but let's see here. Okay, there we go.
I don't want to miss the video though. You have a video, right, that goes really fast through the process?
Let's see here. You know what?
Can find it.
I could end up finding it.
Oh, okay. Well, while you're looking, I'll speak to the workshop because Bob invited my husband and I to participate in a workshop. It's not participate, it's actually to make a piece of glass. You're very clear that we are to do 90% of it, including standing there at that hot furnace, which is a surprise, I'll warn everyone, but it's short-lived. And we came away with two beautiful pieces we love. I know that they aren't at a professional level, but they're beautiful, and we've really enjoyed it. And I think that it is, and one of my last questions is a growing edge, but the workshops have been a growing edge over the last few years, as far as you get to teach people and enjoy people. And again, it's that sort of spreading the wealth of creativity and the creative experience to people who wouldn't have had it in this particular way. So I would highly recommend them.
And again, like with music, you're giving people the opportunity to have the understanding that if they try something, they can probably do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
There was a lot of coaching going on.
Oh yes, of course. But you know what we'll do? We'll include a link. I'm sorry, I did not leave that up on my screen, so it's a little harder to find. It's on my website. How's that?
Okay, that's great. Yeah, people can go to your website.
You know what? I just realized that's all I've got to do.
Oh,
what's our time? It's close to the end. I'll tell you what. If you want to talk about your next project coming up, I can easily pull up the website. That's going to be the quicker way for me to get to it. So go ahead.
Okay, good. So thank you all for watching this tape. We have Creating Space is taking the summer off, and we have a workshop coming up, a gathering with Glennis Redmond. If anyone saw her recording in January, and that is still up on our website, which is anawimarts.com, which of course you've already gotten to if you're seeing this. She'll be with us in September 19th. A gathering with Glennis. She is a writer, and there will be some writing involved, but it isn't to make you all writers. It is to, again, sort of like the workshop might inspire some creativity, some creative ideas, some ways to move forward. So put that date on your calendar. And we have some things coming up. During the summer, we will keep you apprised of upcoming online journal and art show in the fall. And so we're still working, but it's a much quieter time for us, and we will see you back here in September.
Okay, so I've got my website up. I should point out that if you're an artist that's wanting to have the ability to make money at what you're doing, going to someone that's a professional and having them put together what makes sense to other people as they watch what's going on the internet is a fabulous thing. So
it's a good investment. Any of us who've wandered around poorly designed websites, thank you for that investment, because it makes such a difference.
Okay, so here's the video that you're talking about. So let's see if I can get back to sharing. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. Share. I'm just jumping all over here.
There you go.
Okay, so, and I'll do a little bit of narrating that goes with So this was working on a commission for Genworth Financial, over 100 pieces, and towards the end of the process, I thought, well, that'd be interesting to have a friend come over to get images and saw a lot of pictures, and I thought, well, I'm just going to go ahead and put those pictures into a sort of animated style. You notice that there was that electric sound at the beginning, and then the sound of the wind. And for me, the sound of the wind is when you're definitely flowing along in the middle of the piece, and you have this, there's a calmness to getting to this point. And then you finally, it's almost a celebration, even if this is piece number 90. So this is all 100 and let's say 20 pieces as they're flashing in front of you, getting down to my 10 favorite, my 3 favorite, and then my 1 favorite of the whole thing. And off we go. Goodbye, Genworth Financial pieces.
Wow.
It's just an interesting process when you're doing something like that, and I get to the end, and sometimes it's almost like, golly, they're all gone. Wow, what happens?
Yeah.
Next, what's the next thing I'm going to be working on? So,
Yeah, then there's almost a letdown afterwards. But
you almost need that to just.
Yes, need to clear the decks for a while and then start up with something else.
Well, thank you for this opportunity, Karen. I appreciate having the chance to kind of mull over that, what's been going on since the beginning.
Yeah, sort of a retrospective, right?
Yes. And I certainly encourage people to view the other videos that Anawim Arts has up. There's some wonderful statements there. I think they can be inspiring, and good luck to you and your crew as you move forward.
Yes, it's exciting. We're creating our own creating space as we go. So thank you for being part of that process. And we look forward to seeing everyone back in the fall.
Absolutely.
Thanks again. Bye.